Hello and welcome. This is Jennifer McGuire with more of my favorite crafty things of 2016. Today I'm going to talk about my favorite papers and adhesives, and then I'm going to probably take a break until after the Thanksgiving holiday so I can spend time with my family. Now remember that I linked all the products I like below in my description, but go over to my blog because I have discount codes and big giveaways. Okay, so you'll notice that many of my favorite papers and adhesives are the same as I've shared in the past years, but that's good because it means it's tried and true. So let's go ahead and start out with papers. I really believe using a good quality cardstock makes a big difference in the results you get with stamping and coloring. Now the paper that I use most of the time is Neenah Classic Crest Solar White in 80 pounds. In fact, I go ahead and get this in a ream and I cut it down to workable sizes for almost all of the stamping that I do. If you go to stores, you'll see that there are other neenahs available that are 80 pounds, but they're very different. You want to be sure to get this particular neenah cardstock. I will link to sources below. You can buy it in smaller packs of like 25 sheets, or you can get a ream of 250 sheets, which is what I do because I use so much. You want to make sure that it says Classic Crest Solar White and 80 pound. It's very important. There are other, again, neenahs out there that are 80 pounds, but they're not the same. They won't be as thick, they won't stamp as well, and they won't work with Copic markers. So this is something that's worth the investment. When you switch to a good cardstock, you'll get better results and waste less cardstock. So I really think it washes out in the end for me. There is another white cardstock that I use, and that is the same cardstock, Neenah Classic Crest Solar White, but it's a heavier weight. It's thicker. It's 110 pounds. This is thicker, so it's a little more expensive, so I only use it for card bases because it's nice and thick and great for a nice heavy card base. However, you could use this for all of your stamping and coloring if you just want to stick to one cardstock. It's totally up to you, but I have 80 pound and 110 pound, and I keep them in two different areas of my craft room so I don't mix them up, although you can feel them and tell a difference. Now, I do want to mention that just because it says a cardstock is 110 pounds does not mean it's heavy weight. You could have two different cardstocks that say 110 pounds, and they could be completely different thicknesses. It has to do with other variables about the GSM and such, but it's not worth really getting into the explanation of it. Just know that you can't compare different cardstock qualities just based on that pound number alone. So before you go out and just buy a cardstock, I do recommend asking other stampers what they like. This is what I personally like, but there are other great ones out there. I just like this one because I can count on it to be high quality and stamp beautifully. Now, a lot of people ask about how I prepare my cardstock. What I do with my 80 pound Neenah cardstock that I use for stamping and Copic coloring is I take it to an office supply store like Kinko's or FedEx, and I ask them to cut it both vertically and horizontally down the center. You can take a huge stack, and for a couple bucks, they can cut it all perfectly. I draw lines on it so I can make sure that they cut it just right. Then I end up with a stack of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch pieces that are the size of a card front, and they're ready to go for stamping. Now with the 110 pound, which is the heavier weight, I have them cut it down the center so it's 4 1/4 by 11. Then I go home with that stack of cardstock and I score it right down the center, and I have a bunch of top folding note cards ready to go. This saves me a tremendous amount of time, doesn't cost much, and then any little scraps I have left over from those top pieces, I just keep in a little container together, so if I just need to stamp something small, I have those leftovers. So basically, the stack of papers there on the top that are 80 pound, I use those for all of my stamping in my Copic coloring. It's a Copic friendly cardstock. Then the longer pieces below that with the score line down the middle, I use for my card bases. You could cut in the other direction and end up with side folding if you prefer. Now the white cardstock that I use for all my other coloring is the Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock. So these are the 3 white cardstocks I have in my stash. Now this one I use for colored pencils, for my Zig Clean Color Real Brush, for my distress markers, for my tombow markers, any kind of coloring besides Copic, I use this cardstock. Now it comes in different size pads. You could get whatever size you prefer, and I go ahead and cut this down immediately when I get it also, just to save me time. Now you can keep them all separate, but it's easy to tell which is the Strathmore Bristol because it's not as bright white as the other. I don't like when my cardstocks aren't bright white, but since I'm coloring on this and usually cutting them out, it doesn't matter. You don't see that it's not bright white. I just find the Strathmore Bristol takes coloring mediums very well. There are, again, other great cardstocks out there that you can look into, but I do encourage you to find one that is a high quality so you can be sure that your results are even better. So these are the 3 white cardstocks that I use for crafting. Next, let's talk about colored cardstocks. To be honest with you, the same cardstocks that I've used for a couple years now, and I couldn't get to my color swatch ring that you see here. I recently moved and I have it in temporary storage while we build my craft room. So I grabbed this footage of my swatch ring from last year's video, but it's still the same, still use the same colored cardstock. So I'll just talk about them briefly. I know that many companies that sell cardstock get them from the same paper manufacturer, so you'll see some colors similar between the companies. Now, the companies that I like to use because they are good quality, heavyweight colored cardstocks are from Gina K Designs. I like theirs because they have beautiful inks and envelopes that match. I also like cardstocks from My Favorite Things. They have a lot of beautiful colors also. Simon Says Stamp also has gorgeous colors and also paper tray ink. I know many people swear by their cardstocks and their matching inks also. I really believe that you can get any of these cardstocks and get beautiful colors. Now, some of these companies do offer some specialty cardstocks, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But first, I wanted to talk about some essential cardstocks. The next one that I would recommend is the Tim Holtz watercolor paper. Now, any kind of watercolor paper would work. There are some fancier watercolor papers out there, but I'm not a fancy watercolor artist. I just like to use watercolor paper for crafting. So I like this cardstock for a few reasons. One is it's bright white. It's very white, and I like white cardstocks. Another is it has texture on one side and it's smooth on the other. Also, the Tim Holtz paper comes pre-cut for me to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but Ranger sells the same cardstock at 8 1/2 by 11 sheets if you wanted that instead. I've used this for many years and I've always been happy with the results. If you're a watercolor artist, I recommend checking out Christina Werner's channel. She does a lot of different watercolor techniques with other watercolor papers, but I think this one works great for most crafters. Another great product to have is hot off the press heat-resistant acetate. I like to do clear elements on my cards, either clear windows for a card or shaker cards. And this one is fantastic because it's very clear and you can heat emboss it. Not all acetate can be heat embossed because it will warp, but this one's good. Now, there are instructions on the package on how to go about heat embossing with it. I totally ignore those, and I just take the lazy way of doing it. Here's a piece of acetate that I cut. It has that little paper dividing it all. I just gently use my anti-static powder tool on it, and then I stamp on it with Versamark ink. You want to be careful to have a steady hand when you stamp on it. After I've stamped on it, I add my embossing powder. Now you'll notice when I first put it on, it's stuck all over. But if you give it a good few flicks with your fingernail, it knocks all that excess powder off. Make sure your heat gun is good and hot for about 20 seconds. Bring it to that embossing powder and it will heat set beautifully without warping that paper. And look how beautifully clear that looks. So the heat-resistant acetate from hot off the press is a great thing to add to your crafty stash. I can't recommend it enough. Now, recently I've been using Tim Holtz substrate sheets. This is a fun product. There are a lot of unique techniques you can do for using it. However, I use it for die cutting, and I'll have a video showing it soon. There are 3 colors in the pack. What I do with this is I die cut any intricate dies with this substrate sheet, which is much more tough than cardstock. So when you take it out, it's not as flimsy and as delicate as a thin die cut of cardstock. What I do is I die cut 3 of these, glue them on top of each other, and then you have a die cut with lots of dimension to it that's nice and strong that you can add to a card. Sometimes I ink it, or you can color it with markers, or you can die cut a pretty cardstock die cut and glue that on top of these stacked up. It's just easier to handle than cardstock when you have a delicate die cut like this. Again, I'll have a video showing more soon. Another paper that I've had a lot of fun experimenting with lately is alcohol ink yupo paper from Tim Holtz. Now, this is a synthetic paper. I kind of feel like it's a plastic cardstock. That's just an easy way to say it. It's smooth, super smooth, it's heavyweight, and it seems indestructible. You can die cut it beautifully, but you really can't tear it with your fingers very easily. Now there are a billion techniques that you can do with this. Some people do watercolor, other inking techniques. I like to play with alcohol inks on it. Tim Holtz has some great videos showing it. Now my alcohol inks are packed up temporarily while I build my craft room, and I did film a video actually showing alcohol inks from Ranger on this paper, but I deleted it by accident. Can you believe it? I'll show you one of the cards that I made. I need to reshoot it. But let me show you here with Copic markers how you can play on them. Now it's not your normal paper where you blend colors. The markers actually kind of move each other around on it. So it's fun to play around with. You can overlap and almost erase the other color. I like to do coloring on this by doing little dots of color because the color kind of moves each other around and you just get really fun results like you see here. Now, with alcohol inks, you can drop different alcohol inks on it and create some really cool patterns. Again, I don't have my alcohol inks available right now, so I have some Copic reinkers here just to briefly show you how they move around on here. It's really fun to experiment with. I recommend getting some alcohol inks in this paper and just having some fun with it. Now I'll show a video again soon. I just got to reshoot the cards that I did. But you can see how they all move around on this paper like butter. It's just beautiful and fun to watch. I plan to do some art to hang on my wall showing this. Here I'm taking an alcohol swab and just dropping some alcohol drops on it, and check it out how it moves around. Now I'm just going to set this aside to dry for a little bit and look at how on its own it ends up drying. You could create a full background like this and then just do some simple stamping on it or frame it if you wanted to. Now here's the card that I created in a video that I accidentally deleted. You can see the beautiful backgrounds you can get. This one was created with alcohol ink on the yupo paper. It's really fun to play with. You get these beautiful granite looking like backgrounds. If you're like me and like to play around and experiment creatively, the yupo paper might be something you'll have fun with. Okay, now one paper that you really need to have in your crafty stash is a heavyweight, good quality vellum. A heavier weight vellum is great because you can make card bases out of it and score it and die cut it nicely. I really like the Essentials by Ellen vellum, or any vellum that is over 40 pounds. That's a good quality heavyweight vellum. You can heat emboss on this with very little warping. Now one cardstock I used a lot this year is the My Favorite Things Sparkle cardstock. This looks like a glitter cardstock, but it really isn't glitter, so nothing is going to rub off of this. It die cuts beautifully, it's heavyweight, you can even make a card base out of it. I use this silver the most, but it comes in gold and other beautiful colors. I have a couple other colors here. This is the Green-Eyed Monster and the Cornflower Sparkle cardstocks from My Favorite Things. These are all beautiful, especially when they're die cut. Another cardstock that I like is the Gina K metallic cardstock. This is kind of like a matte metallic cardstock. It's not too shiny. The silver is definitely my favorite, but the copper is beautiful also. These are heavyweight, so you can make card bases from it. You could heat emboss on this beautifully, and it's great for die cutting. I recently did a video with the silver cardstock, and I've been using these more and more. Okay, so now that we've covered papers, let's talk about adhesives. These are been my favorites for many years. Remember that favorite adhesives is really a personal preference, but I'm going to share with you why I like these particular adhesives. The first is Tombow Stamp Runner. I've been using this for years. There are a few reasons I like it. One is that say you put the adhesive down and you change your mind on where you put it, you can rub it away with your fingers and nobody will ever know it's there. Now I usually apply it like a tape runner, but you might want to apply it a different way. This one's got this unique way that you can hold it and press it down and put squares of the adhesive wherever you want it. This turns easily, lasts a long time, and once something's stuck down, you can move it carefully, but then it eventually will be permanent. I've never had problems with anything falling off with it, and the fact that you can rub it away with your fingers is huge for me, and it doesn't damage the paper. Many people ask about refilling it, so I thought I'd show you here. This package comes with a stamp runner with a refill in it, so I don't have to do anything with it. You'll see that I can open it and see that refill is in there. So this one's ready to go. I have a different stamp runner that needs a refill, so I'll demonstrate with that one. So I'm going to go ahead and open the stamp runner and take out the empty refill. Now, the refill that's in the package there, I want to keep in that package and carefully flip it over into my hand. I'm going to take that little piece of yellow cardstock out. Then I'll take my stamp runner and place it on top of that refill. I think it's better to not flip this refill around too much because it will come undone. So I'm going to carefully just pop it into place and then flip it over. Now I can carefully take out this white cardstock piece. You just want to gently wiggle it out without moving anything. And you'll see that the tape is kind of loose in there. So there is this little turn here with an arrow. You can see the arrow in the refill. I just use that yellow cardstock piece to insert in there and turn it like a little key. And you just turn it a few times till you feel everything is tighter. Then you close up the stamp runner, lock it in place, and then just run it a few times on your table until the adhesive starts coming out. I find this works perfectly and I've never had any problems. I love the stamp runner. Another adhesive that I use just as often is the Be Creative tape. Now it comes in a variety of thicknesses, even super, super wide, but I use the 1/8 inch the most. It's narrow and it can go into tiny little places. Now this is so strong that once it's stuck down, it's there for good. What I like about this double-sided tape over others is the release paper comes off super easy, so you don't waste any time. This again is very strong. It's great for using on shaker cards or putting your stamped backgrounds onto a card base. I also use it with craft foam because it holds nicely. It tears easily, and again, that release paper comes off smoothly. And since it's strong, you don't have to use long pieces, so one roll will last you for a long time. Another adhesive I use often is the Quickie glue pen. I don't use this for big things, but I use it for small, intricate die cuts sometimes. So it just goes on like a pen. So you'll see it's blue and then it'll start to dry. As it dries, it gets stronger. So say I have this little die cut here I want to add. I just do little lines or tiny little dots along the back, and then I put it down onto my paper and I put something heavy over it as it dries. You want to make sure you give it about a lot of time to dry before you let go, so you can be sure that it stays put. I've also shown in many videos that you can write or add little dots with this Quickie glue pen. Add heat embossing powder and then heat set it, and that way you can heat emboss in any pattern you want. Now there is one liquid adhesive that I use on almost every card, and that is the Ranger Multi-Medium in Matte Finish. Now when I get this adhesive, I automatically pop the top off of it. It pops off easily, and I replace it with a Quilled Creations precision tip. The reason I do this is I love to use this adhesive in small amounts, and that precision tip is super helpful for it. I'll talk a little bit later about keeping it clean. Now I find that this doesn't get clogged, and my regular Ranger Multi-Medium would get clogged often, and this helps me out quite a bit. I'll link to a video where I talk more about this and other options that might be helpful for keeping this clear and for precision application. So with this tip, you want to keep the cap on almost all the time. When you use it, put it right back on. Don't push it all the way down as I'm about to here. You'll see I'm going to push it all the way down. You don't need to do that. Just put it on lightly so that you don't have problems with pulling the tip out. You just pop the cap off to the side when you're using it and then put it right back on immediately. The reason I like Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish is because it dries matte. So if you add a sequin to a card and some of it oozes out, it will dry matte and you won't see it. It's also super strong and dries fast. So here is how I use it on the back of a delicate die cut. I just put tiny little dots, place it wherever you want it, and then hold it there for just a few seconds and it'll hold on there perfectly. And you don't have to worry about seeing it. So I use this on the back of little die cuts. I use this for sequins, others embellishments, anything that I want to be sure will stay put when I put it through the mail. Nothing holds as well as this. Now, if yours does get clogged, you can get super fine tip needles like this and just kind of clear out the tip. In fact, I do this every once in a while just to keep it clear. Then I don't have to worry about it. There are some cleaners that you can get to clear that out, but I find just clearing it out with the needle, it does enough, and you can keep this for a very long time. I really like this adhesive and this tip. It is wonderful, and you don't have to worry about it ever showing up on your card because it is super matte finish. And I think it's handy to have a few super thin needles like this in your stash for various things when you're crafting. I'll link to the ones that I use below. Another thing that's good to have in your stash is different types of products to add dimension to your cards. Now I use either craft foam tape or I use white craft foam. So here's some white craft foam. I'll link to what I use. It has a nice thickness to it. You can see it cuts beautifully. I go ahead and pre-cut it into 4 by 5 1/4 pieces so that they're perfect to add dimension to a card front. So say this is a card that I have here, a top folding card. I use some strong double-sided tape and add a piece of craft foam, and then I glue on top of it my front to the card, like whatever I've stamped on. The reason I use craft foam pieces here instead of a foam tape is that it holds up in the mail much better. You don't end up getting crushed in the mail because it has a solid piece behind that entire panel. I'll link to a video where I show a lot more about this, but I find this is so much better than craft foam, and I think the price is comparable depending on what you use. But the good white craft foam is great for many things. You can die cut it, you can use it for dimension, many different things. Now, if I have smaller pieces that I want to add with dimension, I use craft foam. I use this large roll that you see here. It lasts a very long time. It tears beautifully, and you can cut it down to smaller pieces to put behind small die cuts that you want to pop up. This you can also double on top of each other for extra thickness, and I found that this particular craft foam holds up better over time than others. Some kind of curl up and change colors, but this one seems to last for a long time. Another product that I got a few weeks ago and I have to give a shout out to because I'm going to be using it in videos more and more is the Stampin' Up! Foam adhesive strips. So this is foam tape, but in thin strips. So it's perfect to go around shaker windows. No more cutting wide craft foam tape into narrow strips. This comes narrow. You can tear it easy, cut it up into tiny little pieces to tuck behind die cuts here and there. Incredible if you make shaker card windows. I really like this. There are two strips of strips in a pack, and I am really liking it. Can't recommend it enough. This is my second pack. There are several strips in here, so it should last you for a while. Now, I have shared the Stick It double-sided adhesive sheets in my Favorite Crafty Things series already, but it's worth sharing again because it is an incredible adhesive for many reasons. It is wonderful for die cutting. This is a double-sided adhesive sheet, so you put your cardstock on it, then you cut around it, and you end up with a cardstock with adhesive on the back of it. It is super thin, and the reason that having a thin adhesive is important is that it will die cut beautifully. Just put the cardstock adhesive side down in your die cut machine, put the die on top and run it through, and it'll cut through it beautifully. So now you have a die cut with adhesive on the entire back side so it'll stick nicely. Now, the other reason I like the Stick It is that you can move it around. You can stick it down. If you don't like where you want it, you can move it around. And then when you find where you're happy with it, you can press it down firmly with a bone folder or anything firm, maybe like the edge of an acrylic block, and that will push it into place, and then it will stay put for good. I like that you have the flexibility to move it around for a bit, but then once you press it down, it stays put. This is a wonderful adhesive to have, especially if you do a lot of die cutting. So there you have my favorite papers and adhesives for the year. A lot of them are tried and true and have been favorites for a long time now. I link below to multiple sources for all of these products, but again, go to my blog for discount codes and giveaways. That might be helpful to you. Now, again, I will continue this series after the Thanksgiving holiday, so I hope you have wonderful days with your families. And in the middle, I have a link to the entire My Favorite Crafty Things series, so you can be sure to check that out and see what other videos you might be interested in. Thanks for visiting with me. I hope you'll return soon and have a great day.